This is the Impossible Podcast, an exploration of stories that broke convention, set new standards, smashed glass ceilings, and redefine the notion of what's possible. Welcome back, everybody. We're wrapping up season 1 of Impossible, and this is our part 2 of our season 1 wrap up. So we're breaking down the best moments from the season, everything that we've learned. There's so much to unpack with so many cool guests. So let's jump in.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to part 2 of the season recap of the Impossible Podcast. We're going to share our point of view on each of these episodes. So get ready and check it out.
All right. Our 6th episode features Raegan L, MMC. She's amazing. She's a speaker, advocate, educator, and she's just a powerhouse force of a human. She's so passionate about women's health and health overall. And she talked to us all about her experience on the come up and becoming really a groundbreaking educator that was the first of its kind in her family and also in the educational institutions that she's worked with. So check out Raegan.
There are opportunities for everyone. You just have to be a person that doesn't mind helping to generate opportunities beyond yourself. You can't be selfish with it. And I think that has played a large part in why people choose to work with me, even in academia, because they know I'm not going to darken them. I'm not going to steal their shine or their thunder. Quite honestly, I invite you at a table because you have something that I need. And I want you to be prosperous in it as well. So I think that also comes from my mother. My mom used to always say to me, it's not enough for you to be successful, Raegan. Your success is not your own. Who else are you helping along the way? And again, that started a long time ago with my mom. I'm at a very young age. And I think I have taken that value system into work. And I think that absolutely helps in terms of the reputation that I have in terms of being ethical and paying you what I say I'm going to pay you. But also, too, it really goes into a place of me appreciating the people that are around me and appreciating the different gifts and talents that they have. So I think in terms of the intangibles that have helped me to get where I'm at, I think that probably is definitely at the top of the list, those 3 things.
Love her. When I think about Raegan, I think about how important it is to live a purpose-driven lifestyle and how that impacts every aspect of career, family, and Raegan lives this every day, right? So I think it's something that a lot of us learn later in life. We need to find our purpose, and how does that purpose fuel all of the things that we care about? But I think the earlier we can find our purpose and let it really direct our life or our career choices or how we conduct business is key.
Absolutely. I think Raegan has a depth of person that was so interesting to listen to. And we actually saw this as a pretty common theme through a lot of the people that we chatted to. They either had a really strong sense of their history, their mission and purpose and values, like you just said, Ashley, where they were coming from and where they were headed and why they wanted to be there. And so I think Raegan is an amazing example of somebody who is very connected to what she wants to achieve every single day and doesn't really veer that much from that mission. And even when that means saying no to certain things or guiding her through other decisions, you can see through all that she's been in her life, what has shaped her to be that type of individual. And I thought she was super inspirational to listen to.
I couldn't agree more. The other thing I learned from Raegan in this episode is resilience. I mean, loses her mother, cancer, her own health challenges, but she still manages to get out of bed and to push forward and to build a successful life and career. And so I think she's a great example of some of the most successful people. We have setbacks. We have, failures, challenges, things that happen to us that are completely out of our control. And I love that Raegan just continues to push forward during those times, looks for the positive, kind of centers around her life purpose and keeps going.
Absolutely. Another example of difficult trauma leading to a strong sense of mission that now she's channeled into making a difference in the world. She does that through educating other people, through the consultancy work that she does with brands, through her advocacy work and her speaking. And, I thought it was a great exercise in how you can take moments like that and you can turn them into what your driver is for the rest of your life. And now she's really a massive advocate for women's health, of course, for BIPOC and human rights overall, and health equity overall, and does just such a beautiful job of doing that based on the experiences that she had in her own family and her own life.
Tune in to the season 1 recap. We're diving into the Tamsen Fadal episode. Tamsen is amazing. You're talking about a New York City broadcaster on WPIX. She has books, radio shows. She's a dear friend to Megan and I. And she's also tackling the topic of ageism, right? That we can actually have a new element to our career and our lives post 50.
A viewer recently say to me, knees are not a girl's friend over 45, Tamsen, please cover yours up. And again, my critic, an external critic, she wrote it to me. She wrote it to my website. So to make sure I got it, it sent an email to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's right. Like, I'm old. Am I too old to be on television? External critics. And then I realized, nope, I'm going to do what I used to do. So I went on Instagram with no makeup, and I went on with, talking about age. And just recently I've, maybe the last 2 months, I've talked quite a bit about menopause, because I had a kind of a panic attack, hot flash, whatever it was, on the air. And I had to get off the air and not do the last 30 minutes of the newscast. I literally laid on the bathroom floor in the studio, had 2 male producers like, are you okay? I didn't know what was going on. And now I've shared it, and so I feel like that's the way I have handled my critics, is to take it on head on.
Look, we all have external critics, but I think we have something to learn from Tamsen, who has been a New York City broadcaster all of these years. And she has seen and heard, she's a massive social media following, right? So she's always hearing from external critics, brutal critics. And I love her sort of warrior woman approach to dealing with it, where it's like water off of a duck's back. She hears it and she decides whether this is something she wants to accept or not, and moves forward. I love Tamsen. I think, she's, again, been on New York City broadcasts for so many years, but she's also has this entrepreneurial spirit. She's an ageism activist, right? She's doing so many different things. And I love her entrepreneurial nature. I think she is a bold thinker and doer. And she's certainly someone who conquers her fears every day.
I think Tamsen really showed us that, on the pursuit of success, and certainly most, being in the public eye, like her and some other folks that we chatted to through this season, you're so out there as a successful person. You're always vulnerable. So whether or not you're taking chances in business, or you're dropping your latest bag and you're Rebecca Minkoff, or you're managing the vaccine deployment and all those communications like Sally, or you're like Tamsen, where you're on broadcast news every single night, you're out there. And what comes with that is sometimes not always positive feedback, and not always people who are even giving you constructive negative feedback. Sometimes it's just hateful or hurtful. And I thought what Tamsen did so beautifully is she just sort of absorbed it in this way that just diffused its power and hit it head on. And I think all of us could take a lesson in that, because it's easy to sometimes take that at face value, be hurt by it, to shrivel and get smaller. And she did the exact opposite, which I thought was so powerful and so empowering, and in fact took it a step further, took what they were criticizing her for and has developed a whole platform around it. So go Tamsen.
I think what we learned from Tamsen is that when we decide to have a big, bold career, we need to also accept the fact that not everyone's going to like us, right? And so when you're putting yourself out there, and the more successful you become, the more challenging personalities you're going to encounter. There are going to be people who want to take you down, right? But there's also so many people who want to build you up, right? So I think the learning is, how do we surround ourselves with the people and that tribe of personal friends and advisors, as Megan, you and I are, to build each other up and really neutralize when those external critics come in. And by the way, sometimes they have great feedback. It's also like learning that feedback is data, and deciding, is this person who's giving me this maybe challenging negative feedback, is it someone who or do they have credibility with me? And if so, there's actually some interesting, ways to improve through that feedback. So not taking the challenging feedback personally, but when it's toxic feedback or toxic personalities, really just, neutralizing it and moving forward.
And that was pretty consistent amongst a lot of our guests. People talked about the need to be your own best friend or your own advocate, your own cheerleader, because undoubtedly you're going to face people who are questioning what you're doing. And specifically when you're somebody like her who is out there all the time. So imagine your worst day. I mean, we've all had them, from bad hair days to COVID days to days where you just don't feel like yourself. She has to go and sit in front of a camera and not only just talk about herself, but talk about some of the most important stories that are impacting people's lives. And I thought that was something that was really cool that Tamsen taught us as well, as she talked about finding a purpose beyond yourself for what you're doing. So if she removed herself from the equation and thought about the person who was receiving the information that she was giving to them, and they depend on that and it's important to their lives, then you know what? The bad hair day or the funny guy on Facebook who's saying mean things to you just starts to sort of lose his power. So I thought she had a lot to teach us. And I just love how Tamsen lives her life in a way. She talks about being bold. She really personifies that. And there's moments where I know I've faced criticism or heard weird comments, or Kev will. And I think about Tamsen as somebody who I think has given us a great sort of book of tools to deal with that.
And I love that she's tackling an important topic like ageism, right? Like, why do our careers have to decline after the age of 50? I think she shows us that you can actually create a whole new career chapter, life chapter. She just got remarried and is happily married. So I think it's really interesting that here you have this New York broadcaster who's taking an unconventional path of tackling a super challenging topic like ageism, which we're all going to face at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, how beautifully handled by her. And now she's created a book about it and a platform around it. So she not only took the power away from the people who are, criticizing her and critiquing her and projecting these things onto her, but now she has really harnessed that topic and has had great success from doing so. So kudos to her. Now we're going to take a look at episode 7, Mastering Intuition to Guide Success, with my very close friend, Tracey Ryans. Tracey, I always call him the international man of mystery or something of the like. He's somebody who you can't really describe what he's done in his career because he's done just so many things. He runs a huge consultancy, 13 hospitality businesses that he's involved in. He consults on some of the most impactful boards around the world that influence us every single day. He was one of the sort of founding partners of Soho House and now Noya House. I mean, Tracey just dabbles in so many different things. And, I think most importantly and most of all, anybody who knows Tracey knows that he is just a light. He's a beacon of light, and he's somebody who we're very lucky to know. So check out this clip. We're going to break it down.
It's an infinite game, right? It's not a finite game, right? If you do what you love and you do it with sincerity, you're just doing it. You count the money at the end. Things are going to happen, right? Setbacks are going to happen, but do what you love and do with everything you got. There's no end to this game. If you do something you love, whether you're a mason, a builder, or you write code, just write code. Start a company writing code, or start a company being a mason or a builder, and just do it with all the love you have. And there's going to be setbacks, but there's no end. And when you do it, you're like a spinning dervish. You're in spirit. And you're doing what you're meant to be doing, you're going to soar. It's going to take off. Just every day, just continue doing what you do with love, and just know that there is no such thing as failure or setbacks. It's just a part of the process. It's part of the everyday process. That's life. It's always going to be something.
Oh, Tracey, I mean, my goodness, what a gift of a person Tracey is. He's such an amazing human being, and he's such a unique combination of, spirituality and being pragmatic and being the most giving, softest, sweetest, sensitive person, but such a pillar of strength. He's somebody who I look to all the time in terms of figuring out the guiding light for your life, not just your career, but your life. He sort of blended those two things so seamlessly together. And Tracey talks a lot in this episode about math and magic. And that's a phrase that he said time and time again. But as he described in the episode, I started to understand it more. And I reference that thought all the time. And it's just such a powerful way to articulate the combination that creates success.
I live for Tracey, and Megan, we had so much fun at the Noya House in New York with him. I think he's now running the whole show there as original founder of Noya House. I think for me, what I love about Tracey, and I wish every college graduate could hear this episode, because he reminds us that if you do what you love, no matter what it is, and do it with passion and be the best at it and just get going, you'll be so successful, not even from a business and revenue perspective, but also you'll just be happier, right? So the whole math and magic, I agree. I think about that all the time after listening to this episode, where does it make sense from a math perspective? Am I actually good at this? Do I have the skills to pursue this specific job or industry? But at the same time, how am I bringing the magic to it? What is my unique take on whatever this is? And how those two things come together is when you really unlock a successful life, career, business. I personally think about that in terms of, personally launching my own business growth consultancy in the middle of a pandemic. Did the math make sense, right? Is this something helping companies and leaders grow and maximize their businesses? Is that something I have skills in? Is it something that I know how to do really well? But then what's the magic? What's the differentiation? And so that really this episode, filming it during the pandemic when I was launching my own business, really unlocked growth for me and really helped me land where I am with Franklyn West.
Oh, that's so great to hear. Yeah, he's definitely somebody who inspires, I think, a lot of entrepreneurs, because Tracey has done so many things, from restaurants to these sort of cultural iconic spaces that he gets into that are half co-working spaces and just half institutions for the local communities. And he's involved with the Buddhist community. He's got countless sort of hospitality ventures that he's dabbled in, and runs a huge consultancy. So he's I call him the international man of mystery, but whatever he touches turns to gold. And it's because of that combination, because he has a very pragmatic, grounded sense of how businesses should operate. But then he brings in this sort of sparkle dust, and he understands the power of that. And I think so many people, they don't always harness their creativity and allow their unique creative spirit, like we've seen in Ashley Longshore and other people, like designers and creatives that we've had on the show. He's somebody who has done such a good job of understanding who he is in that way, and then using it to power his whole life around him, and most certainly the success that he has in business.
And not to mention, he's the founder of one of my all-time favorite restaurants in Soho, La Esquina, which if you haven't been to, you got to check it out. It's an epic staple in New York City, right? He just basically disrupted the whole model of what a Mexican restaurant could be in New York City. That's Tracey.
Yeah, and he does that with so many other things as well. So I thought it was great to just listen to him kind of unpack how he's navigated all that. He talks a lot about using your intuition as well. I think a lot of us think about our careers as a linear path, and we think about it as, I should take this step, then take this step, then take this step. And, I think society teaches us a lot about that. But Tracey is somebody who uses his gut a lot. I have sat with him while he's considering different businesses to get involved with, or to launch himself, or initiatives to take on. And Tracey really gives a lot of credence to his gut instinct. And so intuition is something that is very important to him in his life, and has led to a lot of success. He calls it mother intuition. And he talked a lot as well about the idea of sort of forcing things versus accepting things. And I think as type A people, that's always tough too. Like, how much should you be kicking doors down versus listening to what's happening around you and sort of responding to that? And I feel like Tracey has found such a beautiful balance of doing those two things that allows him to be both connected to culture, but also pushing the boundaries just enough to be super unique in what he's doing. Next up, we're going to take a look at our 10th episode with Sally Susman, who is so incredible. She's the Executive Vice President and Chief Corporate Affairs at Pfizer. And she talks to us about making the impossible possible at Pfizer during the deployment of the world's fastest vaccine at the height of the COVID era. So Sally teaches us all types of different things from that journey, and then the multiple other journeys she's had in very, very senior communications roles in government and as a boldly out leader and advocate in the marketplace. So check this clip out, and we've got more to break down.
Along the way, I sort of came to the conclusion that it wasn't worth being unkind. Being powerful wasn't worth being unkind. And if you had to choose between the two, I think most people would choose to be kind, or at least I'd like to believe it. And in my study of powerful people, and I have studied them, I've worked directly for 9 CEOs in my career. So I often sitting next to the corner office. I think the ones who take the time to say good morning, to learn someone's name who works in the cafeteria, to say thank you. These things are not hard to do, but they make the environment so much happier. And people who would work hard for you will now kill for you because they know you care about them.
Oh my goodness, Sally, what an inspiration to all of us. I'm so glad at the time when the world was in the place where it was at, that Sally was the person who had the job that she had. We are all so lucky for that.
I could not agree more. She is certainly a woman who I admire to the fullest. In fact, I believe Sally was a past Matrix winner at New York Wiki, an organization where Megan and I were both very involved, New York Women in Communications. Sally, I think, represents bold choices in such a powerful way. She talks about, coming out during a job interview at Estee Lauder companies, and how brave in that moment when Mr. Lauder asked her who is her husband and what does he do. And she bravely in that moment decided to share that she is actually in a relationship with a woman and has a beautiful child. And in that moment, to make that bold decision, I think represents how she shows up with truthfulness, authenticity, and really owning who she is as a business leader.
And what an incredible balance of kindness, which she addressed in this clip, and power. I mean, let's not get it twisted. She's one of the most influential communicators and, frankly, business people in the world. And she is the nicest person. My goodness, any sort of idea or misconception that you need to be a terrifying boss, or I don't know, like somebody who uses power and manipulation to get ahead. I mean, Sally just exploded all of those misconceptions and operates with such grace and such kindness to the people around her. And I know one of the first times that I met her, she thanked me profusely for making the time to chat with her. And I mean, I was just so touched by her grace every time I've chatted with her. And in this episode, there was no surprise to me, but it was so touching to see her kindness come through so beautifully, and for her to reinforce that, I think, to the audience, that you can be both of those things. You can be a deeply influential person with a tremendous amount of strength and power and authority, and you can also be just a really, really good human being who operates with such a big heart like she does every day.
She's also a provocative communicator and decision maker, right? She talks about during the height of the pandemic, she actually let the reporters in to the labs to see Pfizer building the vaccine, and then leverage that into external storytelling on behalf of Pfizer. So I appreciated that unconventional business decision in that moment, which, by the way, was a serious risk to make a decision like that. And guess what? It paid off for her. So I just think Pfizer is so lucky to have Sally leading the charge. I think the communications, media, and advertising industry is so lucky to have Sally pioneering the way. She's a mentor to so many of us. And the fact that we landed Sally on the Impossible podcast was, I think Megan and I were jumping for joy, screaming. We couldn't believe this. I think we were also both a little nervous before this interview, right? Because it's Sally Susman, and she said yes. And so please check out this episode. It is something that we can all learn from. And thank you, Sally, for making this happen for our viewers.
Absolutely. I think Sally shows us that you can bring EQ into your job and that we need that. And I think the best communicators, and she talks about the best leaders being the best communicators, operate with a very high level of EQ. And I think because of her upbringing and perhaps the moments of adversity that she had in her coming out story and just navigating government roles and very senior communications roles, and most certainly her family, I mean, her emotional intelligence is off the charts and she uses that when she navigates business decisions. And I really feel strongly in watching the decisions that she made on behalf of Pfizer. She was using that, and the sort of sixth sense that she had about what the general community was needing at the time, and used the role and platform that she had to bridge that gap, and did just really a history making job of doing so. So
She's amazing. And, another thing I love about Sally is she teaches us that we can be successful, pioneering leaders in business while also being completely human, right? Like doing business with Sally, doing this interview with Sally, you felt like you were hanging out with your dear friend or your aunt or your cousin, right? It just felt like family. And she feels so normal and human. But then here she's the chief communications officer at Pfizer. So I just definitely check out this episode. It's certainly one of my all-time favorites. So, Megs, let's dive into our key takeaways, the big themes that bubbled up, those common threads through all of these interviews, and how our viewers can tactically learn from these experiences and apply it to their own life, career, business. So, one of mine that just really stuck with me that I'm applying to my life and my company is the fact that setbacks are inevitable. Setbacks are inevitable. If you're looking to build something interesting or put yourself out there, just go ahead and expect that you're going to have cancellations. You're going to bump into the wrong kind of people. You're going to have a client who might decide not to pay you, right? There's going to be setbacks. So if you go into life or business or career expecting those things to come, like it's a cost of doing business, then you won't be so surprised. And I've really applied this in the past few months. And when these things come up, I'm like, oh, that's one of those. Keep on going. There's another one. Keep on going. But then what you realize is that there's so much more good that happens when you have good intentions and you're making things happen. There's so many more rewards than the setbacks. So I just think that is such an important common theme for our viewers. Expect the setbacks. Don't let it take you down. Don't quit. Keep on marching forward.
absolutely. And, we spoke to these people sometimes after the interview or before it, or you and I will have a personal relationship with them. And no one person said that the journey was smooth and easy. No one. And actually, I don't know anybody who has really done anything of substance and big value that has described their journey as that way. So what that helps us to do is sort of see that that's just, like you said, Ashley, just the cost of getting there. And I don't know about you guys who are listening, but I used to think of setbacks sometimes as a sign. I was very hyper about those things when I was younger. So when I started in my journey and somebody would say something hypercritical, or I would make a mistake at work or otherwise, or I didn't get a promotion or something like that, I would think, wait a second, am I trying to get pushed into another course? Am I in the wrong path? Did I do something wrong? Maybe this isn't for me. And I would really sort of analyze those things. After listening to all of these amazing people share their story and the exposure that we've had later on in our careers, there's not one person who has had a straight line. And I know that sounds a little bit cliche, but by no means is that your sign to stop. In fact, many, many times it's your sign, like you said, and many other people said, to just get back up. And it's really your ability to plow through the setbacks and the resilience to stand up in the face of those things that's going to determine whether or not you reach the goal that you're after. So I thought that was really powerful.
And remember, rejection is redirection. When we get rejected, that means pay attention to how we should be redirected.
So, Ash, I thought the second theme that we saw pretty consistently was this need to be your own best cheerleader. a lot of people talked about having an internal dialogue with themselves, and many of them one that's really active. So not only is it this idea of being resilient and getting back up, but also being the person that is your own ally in your journey to success. And a lot of people have harnessed that have reached great levels of success. They've harnessed their ability to tell themselves that they deserve X, Y, or Z, to tell themselves that they're on the right track, to cheer themselves on and celebrate their own wins. And I thought that was a very sweet, consistent thread through all of our guests, and people like Ashley Longshore and others, I thought had really, really gained a masterful hold on that.
And to that point, it's just, how do we not rely so much on external validation, personally and professionally? It's really creating that consistent inner dialogue, being your best coach, and really waking up every day, coaching yourself into your goals and living the life you want to live without that external validation.
And hearing these people day to day and chatting with them, someone like Tracey he's a really good friend to himself. That is the truth. And he defends himself when he needs to. He speaks up for himself, but he's also so giving to the community around him and relies on his cheerleaders. So finding the balance, and Sally talked about this too, finding your circle. So finding the balance between the sources that energize you, being your own cheerleader and having your own positive dialogue, but then also managing the external feedback is a little bit of a dance that I think is not an easy one for many, many people. But you will be the reason at the end of the day that you get back up from something that's really hard. And I think regardless of the external inputs that we have and the people who motivate us, we're the ones who cross the finish line or not. And so if you want to achieve big things, you have to learn how to master your mind and love yourself enough through that process.
That's a good point. How important it is to be proactive with our mind and knowing what is our ego speaking, what is fact, what is fiction. Because at the end of the day, we are not our minds. Our minds are just one element of who we are, right? And I think some of the most successful people know how to be super on the offense with how they think, feel, what they allow in, and again, sometimes challenging feedback from a credible source is important data to help us grow personally and professionally. So it's just, again, it's mastering what's real, what's not, what's helpful, what's not, and being super protective over what we allow in and out.
And all of them had practices for that. So just some tactical things for the people who are listening. Many of them had meditation as a part of their life. Many of them had family or exercise or, getting outside for walks every day. I know Sally talked about the importance of that. Reconnecting with loved ones and family members or kids. People talked about that a lot. So find your sources and the things that help to ground you and give you energy. Your creative outlets, if you're somebody of that ethos. Muhammad is somebody who talked very openly about his therapy practice and his control of his mental health. So these people aren't just relying on their own dialogue, but they're also using tools. So make sure you stay on top of that.
So, another key theme that I think, Megan, you and I loved was each of these folks found their magic. They didn't just rely on their skill set, the math of it all and what they're good at. They also added their own twist to it. And I love this because I know personally throughout my career, I always tried to do this, right? Where it's, you're given a job, you're given an assignment, you have these KPIs, right? But how do you take it and make it your own? How do you leave your fingerprints on something, whether it's your job or your family, in a way that is unique to you and has gravity? And I go back to launching Franklyn West, my own business growth consultancy, in the middle of a pandemic. I didn't launch what McKinsey was doing or Deloitte, right? For me, it was, how do you create this super agile, flexible, fast consultancy, a modern day consultancy that actually drives tangible results? That's something that was my magic. I knew how to do that. So whether it's, you're in the creative field or you're in advertising or you're in media, right? How do you take the assignment and do the assignment well but add your magic to it. And I think it's a combination of what are you naturally really good at, paired with, what is the white space? What is the opportunity in market or in culture that can drive relevancy, the math and magic of it all.
Absolutely. And everybody had sort of this blend of hard and soft skills. So, I mean, obviously, Ashley Longshore is a very good artist in many, many ways. Like, technically, she can execute on that. But it's really that spirit that she has that makes her so incredible. Her point of view is so special. The way she expresses herself is so special. Mick is another one who his touch in an event based on the music that he chooses and as a consultant and entrepreneur, it's like a sparkle dust. I don't know how else to describe it. Tracey was the same. And I think consistently we've seen that throughout all of our guests. I watch Kevin, he has a very distinct flavor, and it took him a long time to sort of allow himself to express that. He used to try to fit into a box. And I think society and many of our jobs, and you guys listening, society tries to sort of put us into categories. And sometimes you might get comments about what your secret sauce is or your magic or your sparkle. Sometimes people might try to dissuade you away from that. Why are you wearing that? Or why do you want to pursue music? Or Kev wanting to be a hockey player. He faced so much scrutiny about that. And that was just his thing. So stay connected to that. I know that's an active practice for Ashley and I can tell you what your magic is any day of the week, and she helps me with that as well. So the people who love and adore you can probably describe to you what your hard and your soft skills are and how you can combine that into your own unique fingerprint. But I thought it was so cool to hear so many people consistently say, I just kept going back to who I was and what I loved. And that was my unique way of interacting with the world and a way that I drove really quite tremendous success. So I thought that was just fabulous.
I agree. And if you think about it, we all bring unique things to the table. Not any person is the exact same, right? So if you figure out what is so unique about you or something that you're really passionate about and just start doing it and getting out there and experimenting with it as you go, I think that's really when you hit your stride.
And each of these guests that we had, without question, I think, have their own unique touch. And anybody listening, you have your own unique touch. So find what that is, harness the hard skills that you want to harness, and then add the math, magic, sparkle, dust. They use different words for it, and you'll be unforgettable. So the other thing I thought we learned from a lot of guests, Ashley, was everybody seemed to have a strong sense of mission and purpose. So it wasn't just about the job that they were doing, but there was a reason behind it that sometimes was based in their family, their upbringing, for some of them, some trauma or difficulty that they've been through. And they definitely had a reason for being and doing that was far beyond themselves.
I agree. I think finding our purpose as early in our life as we can. And for most of us, it's not actually later life, right? But I think as a mother of two young girls, if I could give them any advice, it's just find what drives you, find your purpose, and use that knowledge to propel how you show up as a student, as an employee, as a mother, as a wife. And I think when we find our purpose and live it in our work and our, family and everyday life, we are more joyful and we're more successful.
And it really helps with the resilience, I think, when you have a reason that's larger than yourself. I look at, Kev's schedule is sometimes very, very rigorous, but he always thinks about being a young kid and his experience with sports and the role that broadcasters and voices played in that and how much they influenced him. That makes it pretty easy for him to stay up till 3, 4, 5 in the morning because he's connecting to that young fan and maybe that young Black hockey player that doesn't have a voice or person to look up to. So I thought he was an amazing example. I mean, Sally carried tremendous weight on her shoulders with such grace, and she talks about how lucky she felt to have that opportunity. Tamsen talking about bringing the information that the world needs to their fingertips. I mean, these are big, big, big things and big ambitions that these people carry around every day, but they also give you so much drive and so much reason for doing what you're doing. And it was clear that it's what got them up in the morning.
Megs, the other key theme that really stood out to me was that each of our guests, for as successful as they are, they're human. I felt like I was talking to my best friend or a family member. I think they clearly have tapped into their authenticity and they're good with themselves, right? Whatever quirks they might have, or, they just show up as their full selves. And I think that adds to the magic they bring to business, family, life, right? So I think it taught us that even though, I think it taught us to show up as your full self, or else why are we doing it? Right? We have to be ourselves and how we show up and do business and, parent and all of those good things.
Definitely. And I think if you're not really close to success and maybe you're listening from a really small town, my first house had no heat or hot water. We had a wood stove. I had no reference point for high levels of success. And as I've gotten closer to those things, it's incredible because I used to hold really successful people on a very high pedestal. I don't know about you guys listening, but I thought that they were just struck by lightning. Michael Jordan was struck by lightning and he just had this gift and could basically fly as an athlete. And I held these people in such high regard that I thought they were almost inhuman. And what's been amazing about through our journey to success and also the exposure that I've had through my career, through Kev's, through you, Ash, and other great people that I know, is that I've really, really learned that is absolutely not the case. It has never once been the case. They make mistakes, they feel pain, they face doubt, they have anxieties, they have fears, like all of us. And it's really the superhuman aspect is how they navigate through those things, their level of application and drive and willingness to just keep going and keep trying and keep training. And it really helps to give us the real handbook for how these people achieved what they did. So for those of you listening, you don't have to be perfect to be successful. It's actually far, far from that. These people have adopted the fact that they're human with this real sense of ease and comfort. And that's part of the journey. And really, it's a question of how you manage that humanity and how you bring that to everything that you do that's going to determine how far you can take your career, your life, your goals, your ambitions.
And I think it takes practice, right? Because I think starting out in your career, you feel like you have to be like everyone else. You have to fit into the box. You have to look like the corporate citizen and wear the pumps and the suit and all of these things. I'll never forget two moments that really stand out to me. One was when I decided for a big client meeting at a major ad agency, I decided to throw away my corporate suit and show up in my cowgirl hat. And it just for me was a moment of truth. Like I have my inner cowgirl spirit. I want to wear my hat and my boots and still show up and do business and do deals. And I did it. Yes, I got some weird looks, but I felt great. I felt like I was being true to myself. And the other was when I decided to throw out all of my pumps, my corporate high heels. I hate high heels. I've always hated high heels. But I was once told by a boss that I had to wear these certain shoes to do a meeting. And I threw them out about 5 years ago. And I mostly wear cowgirl boots with my suits. That feels like me. So it doesn't happen so early on because you're just sort of navigating. But at that point where you feel like you're ready to show up as the unique version of you and all of you, just go for it. You're going to be so much happier, right? You're not hiding anything.
I love that so much. And I think the business community in the world is depending on that. We need a diverse workforce in so many different ways. So whether it's your culture, your sexuality, your gender identity, like all of these different things, it's going to be so cool over the next little while as hopefully we make more progress as a society to just see these beautiful aspects of people show up and to see what power that brings to the business community overall and just to the world. So be you and bring you into everything that you're doing. So thank you so much for joining us for this recap. Thank you so much for supporting us this whole season. We were just overwhelmed by all the guests who were willing to hop on with us, and just watching the Impossible community and platform grow has just been a blast. So we hope that we're bringing you, motivation and real raw insights from these people and great content every day. Continue to follow us and check us out. We'll do our best to bring you what we feel that you need. So give us feedback. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, of course, and check us out at theimpossiblepodcast.com.
Thank you guys for joining us this season. What a season. The most incredible guests. We've loved hearing from our community, which has inspired the content throughout our social media.
And keep bringing us your stories. We've heard from some of you who have changed jobs because of episodes that you've listened to, or you've gone after the huge goals that you have, or many of you have written us and said that you helped me so much navigate this work situation or just brighten up my day. So keep that content coming our way. We've got your backs, and we'll keep bringing you more amazing content as much as we can every single day. We love you. Thank you so much.
Keep the feedback coming, community. We love hearing how we're making impact on your businesses, your careers, your families. But we can only continue doing this if we hear from you on the guests you want to hear from, the content, the topics, and of course, check us out in all the usual places.